Ladies and gentlemen, Gene DiNapoli.
Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome to what I believe is episode 18 of Reminiscing with Gene DiNapoli. I am so proud to be here. Happy 2021, everybody. We are January 11th in a new year, and hopefully it has been good to you so far. Right off the bat, let's talk about our weekly sponsor. What we decided to do this year, instead of mentioning all our sponsors at once, we're going to showcase a sponsor a week. And if you go to our page, Reminiscing with Gene DiNapoli on Facebook, all our sponsors are there under the offers tab. So right now we're going to talk about our sponsor of the week, which is Francisco, the Creative CPA. Francisco, don't put it off anymore getting the right CPA for you. Mention Gene DiNapoli's podcast and get a free 1-hour consultation for the first 2 callers every week. So if you call Francisco at 914-589-1013 and you say, I saw your ad on the Reminiscing with Gene DiNapoli page, you're going to get a free 1-hour consultation. Again, that's Francisco, CPA for 40 years experience, 914-589-1013, or go to the website that you see below, www.transfrancisco.com, and you can't go wrong. Thank you. That's great. Wonderful. Hi, everybody. Lovely comments. Keep them coming. We're so glad to see everybody here. Before we get into the show, I want to tell you about a special show I'm doing this Thursday. Last year, I was honored to be picked as one of the Man of the Year awards by an organization called Visions. And what Visions does is provides free services to the blind and the visually impaired. Because of COVID, we could not do the dinner. So what I did was I did a show for them last year at my house, and they wanted to raise $1,000. Well, because of the generosity from my family, friends, and fans like you, we raised $5,600 in one night for Visions, something I'm so grateful to all my friends for. And we're going to do it again this Thursday. We're going to do an Elvis show. We're going to dye the hair black. We're going to wear the jumpsuit. And we're going to do a special Elvis birthday celebration. It'll be on all the platforms that I have. So if you belong to any one of our pages, you'll see the show. And thank you so much, Denise. And if you are so inclined and you can, we'd love to get another donation for the wonderful people at Visions. And Thursday, we're going to tell you about something very special. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, before anything else, I have to tell you that tonight's guest is a legend. If you talk about television shows and firsts in that entertainment industry, this man's name is at the top of the list with some great notables. So, ladies and gentlemen, a guy that does not do many of these shows has granted me one of my wishes. So will you please all give a big welcome to director, writer, and from what I hear, all around nice guy, Mr. Steve Binder. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our guest.
Thanks,
Hi,
Gene.
Steve. Hi, Steve. How was that for a build-up?
It was sensational.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. First off, Happy New Year.
Same to you.
And not too long ago, you celebrated a birthday.
That's true. Same day as Frank Sinatra, actually.
December 12th. Unbelievable. Correct. So you got some good company there.
Absolutely. I was
Absolutely.
a big fan. Still am.
How can you not be? He was 2 things that I love. He was an East Coaster and an Italian.
And he came from Hoboken.
Now, speaking of that, what is your nationality, Steve?
I was actually born. I was born in Los Angeles, California, but my parents came from Russia.
Wow, that's very interesting. It's. I don't meet too many Russians.
Well, I don't know a lot about their past. I'm kicking myself at my age now that I never sat down with my mother, father, grandparents, and really explored their lives, because they had to be phenomenal.
Right.
It was a time when they lived while the pogroms were going on in Russia, and then World War II broke out. And, for my grandparents to travel, who had no money, from what I understand, and to bring themselves and 5 kids with them to the United States. I mean, that's an incredible story in itself. And I'm sure.
That's absolutely that. Now you're a first generation American.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Uh, were your parents or anybody else in your family into the arts, so to say?
Nobody. My dad
Nobody.
always, he had his best friend owned a nightclub on the Sunset Strip. And he always used to admire him, because my dad, because of the responsibility of raising a family, putting food on our table and a roof over our head, he actually worked his whole life in a gas station. And, you know, but he was very creative. And I admired him, because both my mother and father just lived for my sister and I. I mean, they made sure we got a great education. I'm sure, without telling us, they sacrificed a lot in their personal lives for us. And I always be grateful that I came from such a great family and had such great parents.
That's wonderful, and I'm sure they're very proud of your accomplishments as well as your sister. What does your sister do?
My sister is, in fact, her birthday is tomorrow.
Oh, wonderful.
She'll be 92 years old.
Wow. What is her name?
Eileen Ball. And she
Wow.
is, she was a school teacher her whole life. She graduated the University of California at Los Angeles, and she loved teaching. That until the day she retired, that was her passion.
Well, God bless her and wish her a happy birthday from all of us here in New York City.
Will do, for sure.
Steve, if you could raise your volume up on your mic or your phone, can you do that for me? We're getting some comments that, yeah.
I think I'm maxed right
You
now.
think you're maxed? All right, we'll try to do it on our spot. So, what we do, Steve, is everybody knows most of what you did, but we like to touch on things that people don't know too much about. So we're going to spend a few minutes on your early career, what we say pre Elvis. Now, at the time, you worked with such greats as Soupy Sales, Steve Allen, and you were big on a jazz show called The Jazz Scene. Is jazz one of your loves?
It is now, but I loved all music. I think the only negative thing I had, and I've turned around on that, was country music. The real, grassroots, authentic country. That was not one of my favorites when I grew up. But I've acquired a taste for it, and it certainly is come into its own with sort of a country pop. And all the artists, I think, are interchangeable with the great pop artists of today.
Absolutely, they very much are. So now, let's start off with one of the biggest rock shows ever produced. You were the director and had input on a show called The Tammy Show, and that was 1965, if I'm correct.
I think it was earlier than that. I think it was the year before, in 1964.
Right. And if you look at some of the names on that show, we're talking about the Beach Boys, Chuck Berry, James Brown, the Supremes, the Marvin Gaye. Then we had some English acts, Jerry and the Pacemakers, who we just lost last week, and some Motown groups. How was it? And was that a one-day shoot?
No, that was actually, I think we shot it, including orchestra rehearsal with Jack Nietzsche's formation, basically in the early days of what is now called the Wrecking Crew. And some of the greatest musicians in in studio rock and roll. Hal Blaine on drums, Tommy Tedesco on guitar. I mean, just the greatest group. And they've become famous on their own in the last few years. And we did the orchestra rehearsal and my working with the opening titles with Jan and Dean and so forth. The it was done over a period of maybe 2 weeks, and I insisted that all the artists on the show, including the Stones and James Brown and the Flames, Chuck Berry, and etc., that they all be there the entire time we shot, even if they weren't performing. And I think that created a real family atmosphere and environment that added so much to the production. And then, of course, putting in the David Winters dancers. David, as you probably know, was in the original cast of West Side Story, both on Broadway and in the feature film. And David had a following of young dancers that was second to none. And when he moved on the West Coast, I hired him to do the Tammy show. And we did a lot of productions together after that as well. But it was, we were so naive and young in those days. We didn't even know what we were doing, other than we're making a feature film with young, rock and roll artists. We didn't even in those days realize that Mick Jagger was the star of the Rolling Stones, that Diana Ross was the star of the Supremes, and they were just in those days groups, the Supremes, the Miracles, etc. So it was great because there were no egos. They were all excited about doing a movie, working with each other. And in those days, television was in its infancy, and the thought that they could all do a feature film really, opened the door to total cooperation. And I remember Quincy Jones, when he was producing, had a sign saying, "Leave your egos at the door." And that's exactly what we did in 1964. There was, I don't remember one problem in putting the show together. And it was, even the kids in the audience, it was a freebie for them. And they were mostly high school kids from Santa Monica, the adjoining area to Los Angeles. And they screamed from the minute we opened the doors and let them in until we finished shooting 2 weeks later.
Unbelievable. Now you said about egos, and there's a couple of people on that poster that were known to have enormous egos, and rightfully so. So you didn't experience any problems with all these acts together?
To be honest with you, in my entire career, I have had so few problems dealing with egos. I mean, I think directing, if you can get the trust of the artists you're working with, you're a team. You're both aiming for the same goal, which is to make the artist look great. And I've been very, very fortunate in working with stars where we've had so few confrontations over all these years. And, I respect them all. I want to do my best work every single time I go out and do something new. And, I respect talent. I respect, when you get in front of that camera as opposed to someone like myself who's behind the camera, it's a whole different ballgame. I mean,
Right.
And you've got to give them that confidence that they're really doing well. And once they feel that, once they get the vibes, they give 110% of themselves.
Right. How come there was never a second volume to that?
There was. I turned it down, but what happened was the original producer of Tammy was a gentleman named Bill Sargent. He reminded me, frankly, of Mel Brooks' play The Producers, where he was an incredible promoter and he could raise money independently like nobody that I ever met, even to this day. And he was filled with energy and ideas. And once he turned over a project to you as a director, he disappeared. So you had a free hand in being as creative as you wanted. And Bill, unfortunately, like in Mel Brooks, the producers, uh, he didn't have enough faith in them being successful that he would give away 200% of something and they would all turn out to be successful. And he couldn't pay off the deals that he made with everybody. And as a result, he kept losing his own feature films. And in this
Wow.
case, American International Pictures bailed him out financially. And as a result, they owned the negative. And when they came to me, and I refused to do it, or I didn't want to do it, it became they did a version called the TNT movie, and that had on it the hosts were the star of in those days a series called The Man from Uncle.
Yes.
It had great artists. I mean, it had Ray Charles. It had a rundown of terrific artists, but unfortunately, it wasn't rock and roll. It's a lot of the acts were basically what I would consider middle of the road or more in the pop genre. So
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm going to cut this phone off.
Okay.
Call from Thomas S.
Okay.
Is
We
that
are
a bit-
live. You know that now for sure.
Yeah. Is that
But anyway, it was a case of where, Phil Spector became the music director of the TNT show, and he literally begged me to come in and direct it. And it was, even though I worked with Phil a lot afterwards, he was disappointed because I turned him down.
unbelievable? Well, I tell you, I'm sure that all those acts were happy to work with you after the success of Tammy. I mean, your credentials are incredible. Talk about Olivia Newton-John and ABBA. You did 3 specials with the beautiful Leslie Uggams, who I happened to meet when I was a child. I met her at Radio City Music Hall. And you did a special, which we want to touch on, especially.
Gene, if I can interrupt you, I didn't do 3 specials with Leslie. Leslie was the first of 3 specials.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
That led to the comeback
Right.
special 68 with Elvis. But
Right.
we started with Leslie, and then we went to Petula Clark and Harry Belafonte, and then culminated with the same people, my same team and crew with Elvis. So,
Right.
but I loved working with Leslie. She happened to be on Broadway at the time when I was directing Hullabaloo in New York.
Right.
And she was starring in a basically a show called Hallelujah Baby. And she had claimed her fame earlier with sort of a follow the bouncing ball television show, I think with Mitch Miller, where they played music and on the screen they would have literally a bouncing
Right.
ball so people at home could follow the lyrics.
Let's touch on the special with Petula Clark and Harry Belafonte, especially in these times when we need peace and harmony amongst everybody. That was really a touching situation, for lack of a better word, the touch, when Petula Clark reached over and grabbed Harry's arm. Now, you had filmed that scene a few times, and from what I read, the sponsors wanted you to cut it out, and you denied that, and you said, no, we're going to go with that take because we want to show unity in today's day and age.
Well, it really was much deeper in the backstory of that. What happened was when NBC and the sponsor Plymouth Motor Cars decided to do a special with Petula, she basically I had to go to Megève, Switzerland, believe it or not, to talk her into coming back to America and doing the special. And I had, fortunately, total creative control. And so earlier on, when I was doing the Danny Kaye series for CBS in Los Angeles, uh, I Harry was booked on the show, and I left the show. Basically, I was fired by Danny Kaye. That's a whole other story. But so I always wanted to work with Belafonte, and I thought this would be a great opportunity. So I didn't know him. I had, no introduction to him. So I just called his office in New York cold, and lo and behold, it was after 6 o'clock, and his secretary and staff went home. And who picked up the phone but Harry himself? And I introduced myself and told him what I was doing. And he said, Steve, unfortunately, uh, I don't do television anymore. And I'm making a movie now with John Frankenheimer called The Train, a World War II story. And I'm not available. And I said, okay. I hope we get a chance to work together sometime in the future. And about 20 minutes later, he called me back at my office and he said, is Petula Clark that blonde, blue-eyed singer from England that has a hit record called Downtown? And I said, yeah. He said, well, I'm thinking about it. And I talked to Frankenheimer, and if you think we can do something special on it and say something special, I think I'd like a shot at it. And I said, great. And he said, I may want to do an original song and so forth. And I said, we'll do anything you want to do, Harry. And so he committed to doing the show. I called up the sponsor and the advertising agency, told them I had just booked Harry Belafonte. They implied on the telephone, hey, Steve, what color car do you want delivered at your front door of your home? Everybody was so excited, I thought. And then about 10 minutes later, after we'd hung up, I got a call from the advertising agency saying we have a problem. And I said, what's the problem? And he said, we got to get rid of Belafonte. And I said, why? He said, because he's black. And the representative for the car agency doesn't want a black man on the show. And so they want you to cancel it. And I said, I won't do it. So that created a real brouhaha. And they said, but Petula's contract calls for guest stars with an S on the end. And we insist that you put somebody else. If we say okay to Belafonte, you got to have a white star equal to him. And I said, there is nobody equal to him. And Harry had a fabulous track record in the 50s and won all kinds of Emmy Awards for his television specials and so forth. And anyway, NBC basically, the representative said, look, Steve, on the record, the ad guy from Plymouth basically is saying that Belafonte isn't hot anymore. He has no hit records on the charts. He's not making any hit movies and so forth. And that's the reason that he doesn't want him on the show. Off the record, the guy's a racist and he doesn't want a black person on the show. And I said, if I have to take Belafonte off the show, I will go nationally and tell everybody exactly what you told me. So he said, I'll call you back in 2 minutes. He hangs up the phone. Another guy calls from Plymouth saying, I'm the guy, or from the ad agency saying, I'm the guy replacing the guy you just spoke to. We can work this out. And so, make a long story short, they sent me a list of people that they felt would work great on the show. I think Milton Berle's name was on the list. Ray Bolger, who was in the straw man in The Wizard of Oz. And I said, no, I'm not accepting anybody. We're going to do the show with Petula and Belafonte. Next thing, I get a call from the ad agency saying, you've got to fly to Detroit and meet the head of Plymouth and convince him that they should do the show, because the guy who's negative about having a black person on the show, he basically wants to cancel the whole project. So I flew to Detroit, Michigan, and I met the head of Plymouth Motor Cars, who had nothing to do with show business, but was a really, really nice guy. And we're all in the room together, including this guy, Doyle Lott, who was the guy from Plymouth, and who objected to Belafonte. And he didn't, the head of Plymouth didn't let anybody talk. And he looked at me and he said, "Steve, are you happy with the show you're planning with just Petula and Belafonte?" And I said, "I'm very happy." And he said, "Is Petula happy with it?" And I said, "Yes, she is. She loves it." He said, and he turned to this guy who worked for him, who got, not too long after, got fired. He said, "I don't think we should interfere with Petula and Steve. It sounds like they've got their show planned. Let's just go to Los Angeles and do the show as planned." And so the guy gets up out of his chair and he comes over to me and he said, "Steve, I'm sorry all this happened. I'll see you at the Emmys." Well, I never submitted any shows for the Emmys early in my career. I didn't even know what they were. And as a result, when we were shooting a song that Petula Clark had written herself, an anti-war song called Paths of Glory, this guy freaked out. And I had staged it originally because we didn't have an audience and I could do multiple takes. I basically did it with Petula standing behind Belafonte, because Belafonte had done his segment. He had done a couple of other songs and had danced in one of them and so forth. And then Petula comes out and starts this anti-war song. And the shot I loved. The shot was beautiful, but there was no chemistry. And I feel strongly as a director, if you watch anything, I don't care if it's a drama, a musical, you got to have emotion. You got to cry, laugh, be sad, be happy, whatever. But if there's no reaction, and that usually comes from everybody's gut, then it's a waste of time and money. So I just sat there and thought about it. And I said, "Okay, I think I know what the problem is." I went down on the stage and I said, "Petula, next time you come out, forget that shot of standing behind Harry. Just go up alongside of him and sing the song, with the two of you straight ahead." And then all the emotion kicked in. All of a sudden, I looked while she's performing it, right before she reached over and touched Harry. I see tears coming out of both their eyes, and all of a sudden, I realized that's the take. That's what I was looking for. And as soon as we finished the song, there was like a herd of elephants running down the hall at NBC. And guy pops his head in the control room and he says, "The sponsor is furious. He just left. He's not going to allow that to be broadcast." So Petula Clark's husband, Claude Wolfe, and myself go down into the basement where they're actually recording the show with all the tape machines. And I went to the editor and I said, "I want you to erase all the other takes. We're only going to have one take, which is where they touch." And the editor is shaking. I mean, he got out a piece of paper and he made me sign that I was 100% responsible for making this decision. And anyway, that's basically the story. But I knew if there were other takes, NBC for sure would, to please the sponsor, would put another take in where they didn't touch, they didn't feel emotion or whatever. And that's the real story behind the scenes of that song.
That's a great story, and we're very happy that you stuck to your guns and kept that in there, because it was a pivoting moment in television history, which led to the acceptance of Caucasians and African Americans doing more work together. So you were really on the forefront of that, Steve, and we applaud you for sticking to your guns.
Well, interestingly enough, when the show aired, and there'd been Time magazine and Newsweek magazine actually came down to the studio to take photographs of the touch off the television screen. and then wrote big articles internationally about the incident. When the public saw it, they didn't realize the story I just told you, and they thought it might have been a big publicity stunt to get people to watch the show. They didn't realize, what really happened behind the scenes, but that is exactly what happened.
Right. We're going to show that picture right now to our viewers. So this was the start of the marriage between Caucasian and African Americans doing more work. Anthony, put the picture up so our viewers can see, please. It's under Clark or Petula. I don't know how we did it, but there we go. Yeah, that's a great shot.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the moment. That is the actual moment taken
That's
off the television screen.
That's great. I just want to touch on a couple of other things before we get into the Elvis segment. Do you have any regrets on doing the Star Wars holiday special?
I think my answer is going to shock you. I have
Go ahead.
absolutely no regrets whatsoever. It was a ball doing it. And in a short explanation, from get-go, George Lucas was involved in this, did approve it. And what people didn't realize after the Star Wars first movie, before anybody knew it was going to be such a huge success in motion pictures, George made a deal with 20th Century Fox, because I think George even financed some of the pictures. And he bailed financially a little bit. They were advertising rights. He got all the toy rights to Star Wars. As a result, he made a deal with Kenner Toys. And he went to CBS, and they agreed. Now, I wasn't even involved in all this. They agreed to finance a children's special on CBS to sell toys. All the Star Wars fans, rightfully so, thought they were going to watch this multi-million-dollar feature film, etc., when it was a children's television budget, and with the entire cast of stars. When I went there, place the original hired, who's a friend of George Lucas, and I think they went to USC college together. They had shut down the entire production because they'd gone through practically the whole budget on just the first few days. And then I got a call from my friend Gary Smith, who was the producer of Hullabaloo, and Smith Hemmen were one of the greatest variety teams in television. And Gary called me at home and he said, "We have a big problem. All my staff shut the production of Star Wars Holiday Special. None of my staff are going to get paid now. And the only way I can get back into production and get them to agree to finish the special is if you'll come in and finish it without any preparation whatsoever." So I got the call from Gary Smith on a Friday, I think it was, and Monday morning I was shooting. And so I had a ball. I mean, I loved working with everybody on the staff. I didn't hear anybody complaining. If they were complaining, they were basically complaining because by then the Star Wars movie was such a big hit, and they felt they should have financially participated in the rewards, which Lucas actually did. I think he gave the stars of it a small percentage of profits and so forth, of net profits. And but when I read everybody complaining what a disaster it was, I'm actually amused by it because it never was intended to be a Star Wars movie 2. It was a children's show to sell toys to kids.
That's great. And if you look at it like that, it did its job. It did what it was supposed to do, right, Steve? It did what it was supposed to do. Sell toys.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing because all these years ago, I'm still receiving fans of the show writing me about how great it was. And then, obviously, if you were expecting to see Star Wars 2, you'd have been disappointed too, because
Right.
as I explained, it was never intended to be a movie. Uh, and I was so busy at the time doing other projects that I barely had time to come in and finish the production, but they did end it, and I didn't even, it's the only show in my entire career that I did not participate in post production and edit the show.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. Um,
I wanted, if I could, Gene, I just wanted to mention, thinking back of our previous conversation about the touch, is that there was a show on with Bill Cosby and Robert Culp, I think it was, called I Spy. So they interacted as black and white co-stars, and I would have to just define that it was the first time in variety television that a black and white touched each other.
okay.
Previous to that, I just want to
Okay.
correct that.
Well, I'm glad you did, because the reason for this show, Steve, is not to talk about the everyday knowledge that everybody has. And what you just said gives our viewers another perspective as to how it came about. And I'm glad you thought of that. But the time has come to go into another aspect of your career, one that we are celebrating this entire month. Uh, of course, I'm talking about a little unknown singer named Elvis Presley. Little unknown.
Yeah.
Now, I got a couple of questions for you. First of all, I want to put a picture up of your first book that you did. Anthony, put a picture up of the first book that was done, the definitive on Elvis 68 at 40. This was done in 2008, and it was a great book. It was a great book for its time, but you have something else now coming out. We're going to touch on that. So whoever has this book, 68 at 40, is going to have a collector's edition in the next couple of months, and we'll tell you about that. But a couple of questions I got for you, Steve, that if you could touch on them, I don't know if they pertain to you as a director or if it was musical collaborations, but who made the gospel medley? Who created that in the 68 show?
I had two brilliant head writers named Chris Beard and Alan Bly. Uh, you'll know them because they were the producers of the Sonny and Cher show, the Andy Williams series, and just super talented writers. Unfortunately, Chris Beard passed away a couple of years ago. Alan is still, kicking, and we just saw each other recently. But it was really a case that when I did the Elvis Presley special, as I explained earlier, I had just done the Petula Clark Belafonte special earlier in the same year in 1968. And previous year, I had done Leslie Uggams. I had put what I felt was, a, a totally creative team together behind the scenes. What I was able to do with Elvis is it's the first time, I think, in his career where he didn't have anybody from the Elvis Presley estate or his world other than the entourage hanging out, but none of them were involved in creating this special. They were all my personal team that I had been working with quite a few years before. And that freed Elvis up completely. The only person that he actually asked me to put on my staff, which I agreed to, was Billy Strange, who he had done some recordings with and so forth. And Billy was working with Nancy Sinatra at the time. He had the hit record, These Boots Are Made for Walking. And because Nancy had a hit with These Boots, he had a lot of pressure on him to deliver a full album of 10 or 12 songs. And when Elvis asked me to hire Billy, I called him and I said, "Are you going to have a problem or a conflict with Nancy Sinatra?" And he said, "No, no, trust me." So now I start production. Who I really wanted from the very get-go was Billy Goldenberg, who I'd worked with on all these previous specials and even Hullabaloo, where we met originally. And but I felt, I'm going to give Elvis whatever he wants. And so we're now prepping for my first rehearsal with Elvis for the special. And at the time, I was partnered with a brilliant record producer named Bones Howe, and we were exclusively producing at the time all the hit records for the Fifth Dimension, the Association. Bones was working with Laura Nero, and she was cutting a terrific song called "Save the Nation," which should be re-released now, I think. So it was really a case of where what I never knew was that after my first meeting with Elvis, he went home to Priscilla, and she had just given birth to Lisa Marie at the time. And he said, "I just met this guy named Binder, and we had this meeting, and I really don't care what the Colonel says to me. I got a gut feeling on this, and I'm going with Binder and whatever he wants me to do." Well, I never knew that. In fact, all my confrontations with Parker, I was always wondering, why isn't he firing me? I mean, he certainly must have the power to do it, and I'm having one argument after another with him. And, Parker originally wanted it to be 20 Christmas songs, and here I was doing a totally different show. And, and Elvis loved everything we were doing. And, I had even hired two separate dance companies, Claude Thompson, who did the gospel segment, who was, really brilliant in ballet and so forth, and Heidi Rogers, who had co-starred on Broadway when I met him with Sammy Davis Jr. doing a boxing play. And, Jaime was from Puerto Rico and just a living specimen of a prize fighter. And two to come he did comeback special. Not only, really they became best friends off of that special, as did many of us. And it just turned out to be magic. I mean,
Right.
when you talk about egos and what have you, I mean, there was absolutely none. I was worried because Elvis never complained about anything. He loved everything we asked him to do.
Right.
And he did it, as nobody else could. I was not an Elvis Presley fan. We started that project. And now, as you can tell by my enthusiasm, I mean, I know how brilliant he was, and he died much too soon in life. And I always said, which I don't think Priscilla or the people really close to Elvis even like what I said, but I said I don't think he died of drugs. I think he died of boredom.
A multitude
I really, when I talk to Elvis. Pardon me?
A multitude of people say that, Steve. You're not the only one that says that. Yeah, we're losing connections here and there.
He would, when Earl Brown wrote "If I Can Dream," our closing song, that was a big, problem with the Colonel, who hated it, didn't want me to do it, didn't want Elvis to do it, and told everybody, I'll never get Elvis to sing that. And he wanted a traditional Christmas song, and then he wanted a 1950s Frankie Lane hit record called "I Believe." And and I wasn't going to do any of those type of songs. I said, let Perry Como and Andy Williams and those kind of artists do it. But you're talking about Elvis Presley. By that time, I knew he was the king of rock and roll. There was no question in my mind. And in fact, Elvis was really, aside from his amazing talent, he also had that sort of Southern naive loyalty where, I knew, I'm not saying that he that Colonel Parker didn't contribute immensely to his success commercially and publicly, but I thought there was a time when creatively the Colonel had no knowledge of what Elvis really wanted. Elvis wanted to travel the world, meet his fans, climb new mountains, have new challenges and so forth. And he was denied all of that and ended up, another thing I mentioned, which I'm not sure everybody's too happy with, but he ended up a saloon singer in Las Vegas. And that was, horrible. And that was, really, in my opinion, his downfall. That had he done what he really wanted to do, but he had this naive, loyalty to the Colonel that I think had he had the guts to leave Colonel Parker earlier, he'd still be around today kicking.
We'd like to think of him being around under any incarnation, because when you see people like Tony Bennett at 93 still doing great, it wouldn't have been too far fetched to see Elvis in the same way. Steve, we're losing.
Tony was great for me. I work with him a lot on the Steve Allen show, the Westinghouse show, which was my first big break of doing a 5-night-a-week, 90-minute late night show with Steve for Westinghouse. And when I got the opportunity to do a closed circuit show, that's how I met Bill Sargent, who produced the Tammy show. Before that, Bill had approached me about doing with at that time he had 2 other partners, but they were doing a tribute in celebration of the integration of schools. If you remember, you may be a little too young for that, but there was a time when the government had to intercede in Alabama because Alabama was denying any black kid access to a white school. And so we were doing a project for the NAACP to raise money for them, celebrating this event. And I did a show which was, we could spend a whole other show just talking about it, called the Freedom Spectacular, with Burt Lancaster, Gene Kelly, Richard Widmark, just icons in both film and television that we did. And it opened so many doors for me because, I I was so naive that I thought, why not call them and get them all on the show? But Tony Bennett is the one who opened the door for me, even to Burt Lancaster.
Wow. Thank a fellow New York Italian for that.
That's right.
And
Exactly.
my show here is going to propel you into social media stardom, right? Steve, we're losing a connection with you a lot. Steve, we're losing a connection.
When I started working in New York, one of the first shows I did was starring Danny Aiello, and I worked with Tony Sirico on another project and so forth. And I became kind of the adopted child of the Italian acting community in New York. And I used to arrive literally on the late night flights. And I'd arrive in New York 11 at night. I would usually stay at like the Warwick Hotel. I'd go to check into my room and they'd all be there.
That's great. That's great. You know, Steve, we're losing a connection with you, so we're gonna have to figure this out. We're gonna have to do part 2 with you again. But I got some questions for you that are really yes and no answers because we got some questions from viewers, and we want to put together some. We want to debunk some rumors. Is it true that you had to cut Elvis out of the
Why
black?
don't? Hey, yeah, you're breaking up now, and I can't hear what you're asking me. But why don't we do it again, and we'll start fresh, and hopefully we won't have any phone interference, and you know
I would love that.
we'll schedule another day if you're up
I would love that. Maybe we got to do
to
it
it.
by phone and we could show pictures. But do you hear me now? You hear me now, Steve? Mm.
Not really. I hear you, but you're coming in and out. I really can't understand what you're saying.
I'm going to call you on the phone.
I think I've lost you completely now.
I'm going to call you on the phone.
Want to call me on my phone?
Yep.
Got it.
Hi. Okay. So this isn't the way we wanted to do it, but we got to salvage this because it's so wonderful. I don't want to lose the entire show. So, Anthony, can you hear us, Anthony? Anthony. Oh. I'm sorry, Steve. This is the first time it's been this bad.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
Might be on my end as well.
Oh, put him on speaker. Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. Anthony, could we hear him out there? Can everybody hear Steve through the speaker? Okay. So, Steve, is it true that Elvis had to be cut out of the black leather suit after the first show?
No. It was all obviously sweaty, and because it was leather, it was skin tight, and it was a hassle of him stepping out of the leather, but it didn't have to be cut off.
Gotcha. When Elvis slept in the dressing room during the taping, was that the first time you've ever experienced that of an artist sleeping in the dressing room?
I would say for sure, yes. I've never experienced that before.
Put to rest a rumor. There was a blue shirt photo segment, and it was considered a sound check rehearsal. Everybody thinks it was a third sit-down show, but it wasn't, correct?
Correct. He wore black leather in both the sit-down shows
Was-
and also the stand-up shows.
Right. Was the
where
blue
we
shirt
did the orchestrations.
right? Was the blue shirt rehearsal recorded in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, it was, because I think we used the blue shirt actually when we did the medley of basically, what I like to call the Bluebird segment, where he's a guitar player who leaves a small town, goes out to see the world, experience life, and decides that the happiest place he ever was when he wasn't famous and he was just strumming his guitar in his hometown.
Right. A couple of more questions, Steve, and then we're going to call it a night because I don't want to take up more time than I'm allotted. The arena segment when Elvis was in the middle of the boxing ring, I read that was a secondary set, so that wasn't built especially for Elvis.
Yeah, it was built, especially it was for the orchestra. If you noticed in that segment, this what they call the stand-up segment, the orchestra was actually playing live in the bleachers directly in front of the stage, and behind the cameras, and so what happened was when I finally wanted and got permission to film the what I saw in the dressing room every night. We had no money left for the set or anything like that, and I said, then let's use what it was not really a boxing ring. It was just a square stage, basically without ropes, and it turned out to be absolutely great because it put Elvis in, surrounded by his fans, sitting on the steps, etc., surrounding him. It made an intimacy that you'd have never ever captured if nobody was there other than him performing.
Right.
And that's when we used Mac Davis's song of Memories, which also went on to the charts after the special aired. It was If I Can Dream and Memories were two original songs by my staff and Mac. And ironically, Mac co-wrote that song with Billy Strange. And, I just thought it was the perfect, closing to him, reminiscing about all his improvising and the acoustic section.
Absolutely. There's a great box set out. It's called Elvis, the Complete 68 Comeback Special. It's four CDs, and the last CD is Elvis rehearsing in the dressing room. Were those both your tapes that were used on this project?
Nobody was allowed to bring in any recordings into his dressing room. I was given permission on my little tiny Sony Walkman, basically. And next thing I knew, there are recordings coming out of, from who knows where, which meant I wasn't the only one. I never knew they even existed, to be honest with you, until they came out on that record.
Wow. That's pretty interesting because everybody credits you with those rehearsal tapes.
Not in the dressing room itself.
Wow.
But it was my recording while I had my little tape recorder on.
Right. Let me ask you this. As a director, there's a part in the gospel segment where Elvis messes up the lyrics because he was lip syncing. Why did you not reshoot that to where it was perfection?
Because I don't believe in perfection. I believe in reality, and I believe in NBC, after I turned in the master tape, was complaining that he was sweating, and especially under his arms. And they said, you can't show any of that, And I said, are you kidding? They didn't get it at all. As a matter of fact, it was amazing how many people, after they even saw Elvis before it aired, they didn't get it. They just didn't understand the power of what we had photographed,
Wow.
And so you got to realize the initial master, when I was forced into doing a 1 hour special, when I was always wanting to do the 90 minutes, and in a 1 hour network television special, it's really only about 48 minutes between all the commercial breaks and the, promos and what have you. And I wasn't really able to use much of the improv. I just used it as interstitial, introducing the big production segments.
Right.
And yet I knew the improv was the show. It was a lot more important than all the money we spent on costumes and people and sets and what have you. I knew that was the Elvis that I wanted to show on television to audience who were craving to see Elvis, not rehearsed, not powdered down, and nobody ever thought it would happen, including myself. In fact, when we actually, when I sent Elvis out to do that segment, he said, Steve, I can't do it. I don't remember anything I did in the dressing room. I don't remember any of the songs or the talk that we did or whatever. You better cancel it. And I said to him, you know, Elvis, I've never asked you to do anything that you didn't want to do, but here I'm telling you, you know, you have to go out there. I don't care if you go out there and say, you know, hello and goodbye and come right back, but you got to go out there. And when I went to the control room and put my headset on and started communicating with my camera crew, I didn't know if he was going to be there. I never got a definitive answer from him in the makeup room where we met alone, and he told me he didn't want to do it. And you know, and then it was a case of where I had no idea he would spend 2 hours out there, and it was almost that vaudeville gag of, you know, get the hook, get him off the stage, because he was having such a good time. He totally forgot he was even filming a television show. He was just having so much fun.
Wow.
Especially having Scotty and DJ there. That really loosened them up, you know. He hadn't seen them, you know, for years before, and that was the last time they saw him.
Right.
They never worked with him again.
Right.
And so
wow.
That show was meant to be. I mean, you know, I can certainly, you know, be thankful that I was in that director's seat doing it and creating it and producing it. But the truth of the matter is, I had no idea it was going to have, you know, the impact that it had, and have him totally, you know, he was so into it. I mean, it was just amazing. You couldn't have predicted it. When you're doing a live production of any kind and you have a live audience, you never know how it's going to turn out. I won the Emmy one year doing the first Barry Manilow special. We did it over 2 nights in Chicago at Ravinia Park. The first night were all VIPs in the audience, and we bombed. I mean, it was embarrassing. It was so bad. We came back 2 days later, did it again. Now all the hardcore Manilow fans were in the audience, and we had one of the greatest nights ever, you know, so you never know.
Wow. That's when you're playing for your peers as compared to playing for suits and ties.
Exactly.
One more question. And then I don't want to, we're going to have to do this again, Steve, with your kind permission. We're going to have to do this again because we lost so much of it. But maybe 2 more. Was Little Less Conversation filmed when you recorded that? Was there a segment filmed for that?
Repeat that again.
The song A Little Less Conversation by Mac Davis?
Oh. Yeah, I take full responsibility for it not being in the show, because we recorded it with the wrecking crew in our sessions, but I didn't know where to put it. I had already programmed the entire show and never thought that the improv was going to be so powerful and so great that I had no room for that song. It didn't fit anywhere.
But
so was that
right? Was that song filmed on video? A segment?
No, I never even played it.
Gotcha. And this is the way we're going to go out, Steve, and hopefully we could do this again real soon with your kind permission. Tell us about finding Elvis in the studio recording If I Can Dream on the floor.
We had always planned on doing the orchestra track in the recording studio in Hollywood, not at NBC. And so all the musicians were there. We're in the biggest studio practically in Hollywood. As a matter of fact, I saw Sinatra record at that same exact Studio A, which was the largest studio at Western. And so what happened was that Elvis was there just to listen to the orchestra do the track. And then he came to me and said, Steve, I want to rehearse the lyrics, so could you give me take and let me sing on it, and then it'll never play anywhere. It's just for me to learn the lyrics. And so I said, okay, but in those days, I don't know what it is right now, but every time the orchestra played either live or you played back their track, it was as if they were, always live, and they got paid on every time you did it. So in order to save some money, I said, let's wait till the orchestra goes home, and then we'll lock the door to the studio and you can sing to the track, and then I'll give you this copy to take home and listen to. And so that's exactly what happened. And so it was eerie because out on this enormous stage, all you could see are the amplifiers and their little red lights. And I asked the guy at the recording studio at Western to turn off all the overhead lights. So it was just in the main studio. It was dark except for the amplifier lights. You could barely see Elvis out there himself. And then where Bones Howe, myself, Billy Goldenberg, and my production assistant, script supervisor, were still in the control booth, which was lit up, and that was the environment. And then normally in a recording studio, it's traditional that you put the singer in sort of a soundproof box, and you have an overhead microphone hanging over them on a boom. And Elvis said, "Do you think I could sing this since we're not using it with a hand mic?" And I said, "Sure." So we got a hand mic and gave it to him, and he was just out on this huge empty black stage with these little red lights all around him. And he got down on the floor, at first seated, and then we played back the track to him. And next thing I know, like in a fetal position, like a baby in a womb, he curled up on the floor and put the microphone next to his mouth and sang what I felt always. And unfortunately, we didn't have cameras to shoot this, but he sang "If I Can Dream" as if it was, he knew it like the back of his hand. It was an incredible performance. I think I was told that that's the vocal that they actually used on the album, even though they had no video to go with it.
Wow. What a story, and what a way to round out what we consider one of the best interviews that we have done by far. Steve, with your kind permission, I'd love to set up something a little more stable on the phone. My listeners and my viewers are begging me not to stop. They're begging me. Do you have time for another couple of questions?
Sure. Let
me ask you this. This isn't an Elvis question, but was there anybody you wanted to work with that you never did that is no longer with us?
Probably, I would have loved to work with Sinatra, but my friend Dwight Hemian, who unfortunately passed away, was he did what I considered the best of Sinatra on television, and then he was obviously famous for his Barbra Streisand, early Streisand specials in New York and so forth. And Dwight was preceded me. He was a little older than myself, and he did the Steve Allen Show in New York before Steve moved out to the West Coast. So we kind of had a lot in common creatively. But I had tremendous respect for Dwight, and I did work with Sinatra one time. One of the very first shows that I ever directed was a slapstick comic named Soupy Sales. And he was famous for his pie throwing, and kids loved him. And then we would do these kind of, on his daily show, which I did 5 days a week in the afternoon, kids would rush home to watch Soupy, And the shows were built around basically dirty jokes without the punchlines, because the kids all knew the punchlines anyway. And so we were so popular in Los Angeles at the time that the ABC network decided to put him on nationally on the network. And I got this phone call from, I didn't believe it at first, but you know, it was hard not to recognize his voice. Frank Sinatra called me, and he said, "Steve, I want to get a pie thrown at me by Soupy." And what I didn't know was that Frank Sinatra Jr. was practically raised by Soupy and his two boys, because they were next door neighbors in Beverly Hills. And Sinatra came on the show, took a pie square in the face. It was great. But that was when I was first starting out. I had never done any major shows at that time other than doing Soupy. And so that was, you know, that was an incredible experience. And you know, it just seemed that you know, I think I was at the time the youngest network director in television, period. And you know, I was the kid, and now I'm the old one, you know. So if I gave advice to any of your listeners, it's take advantage of your life. You know, it just goes by so quickly, and you know, everybody has something to offer. I mean, I would say my ingredient of success is, yes, I had the chops to direct and produce, but equally I had a lot of luck along the way. I mean, I had great teachers of my camera crews and people that I respected who reached out to help me, and I'll never ever forget it. And you know, and I'm not saying it because, oh, he sounds like a nice guy. I'm saying out of the real meaning. I never in my life thought I'd be in show business or be a director or anything. It just all fell together.
Well, you know, Steve, a career like yours is like a good food dish. If you have 10 ingredients and there's one bad one, it makes the whole dish sour. So you were part of a great mixture of ingredients. And for that, on behalf of my viewers and my listeners, I want to thank you for your time tonight. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Hopefully you agree to a part 2, and we'll touch on some other subjects. And I hope you had as much fun as we did.
Okay.
And happy birthday and happy New Year.
Thank you.
And God bless you. And everybody, let's say goodbye to our guest tonight, Mr. Steve Binder. And they're giving you all thumbs up and applause. Look at this. Unbelievable. Good night, Steve. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you. Wow. As you can see, everybody, I have a list of questions that I wanted to ask Steve, but he was so informative of all his answers that and the technical difficulties. We are so sorry. We don't know what we're going to do. If you know, they're in California or somewhere else, sometimes the signal doesn't work, but we're going to try our best. Want to show you Steve's latest book, ladies and gentlemen, Comeback 68 Elvis, the making of the special. This is the preview. Yeah, that's the preview copy. The next copy that's going to come out will be the end of the year with the new movie that stars Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker. And the book will be black instead of red. If you do find this, it is incredible. The stories are unbelievable. Elvis never looked better than in 1968, in my opinion. In my own collection, I have the 68. Look at this, the If I Can Dream statue, and I have the improv segment when he picked up Scotty Moore's axe and he played One Night. So although I don't get to do it in my show, the 68, I'm very big on it because I believe it was a pivotal point in Elvis's career. So I know there's one woman out there named Janet who, for lack of a better word, has an orgasm every time she watches him in black leather. She's going to kill me when I say that, but it's true. Once again, there's a wonderful box set right here, the complete 68 comeback special with the original album and bonus tracks. Then the 2 sit-down shows where Elvis is around in the round with his musicians, 2 stand-up shows, which Elvis is on the stage by himself, and then 2 rehearsals that if it wasn't for the powers to be, we wouldn't have these wonderful, wonderful recordings. So Elvis Presley, gone 44 years, is still one of the biggest selling artists in American music, in music history. He was the top streaming artist of 2019. It's amazing how Elvis is still relevant. And what we want to do is keep his memory alive with my live shows, my tribute to Elvis, our shows like this. And that's what we're going to do. And next week, we're going to continue our tribute to Elvis. Anthony, do you have next week's banner? You should have it. I gave it to you. But next week, we have a dear friend of mine who will be tuning in via telephone. We're talking about the actress from the wonderful movie Kissin' Cousins. Miss Cynthia Pepper is going to be our guest next week. Yes, there she is. Beautiful Cynthia. Just celebrated her birthday. Stunning as ever. She's going to be our guest next week. So if you are on our page, Reminiscing with Gene DiNapoli, and you want me to ask her some questions about her career with Elvis or her other career, non-Elvis, please send them in. And when I did the promo on this, it was great. I said, join us for Cynthia Pepper, the only girl who flipped Elvis instead of flipping over Elvis. And she's going to talk about that wonderful story when she threw Elvis a karate flip and he wound up on his backside. Want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Gene DiNapoli. Join the Facebook page, Reminiscing with Gene DiNapoli. And check us out. Check out all our sponsors on our page under the offers tab. Once again, tonight's sponsor, Francisco, the CPA. Don't put off anymore getting your CPA. For a free 1-hour consultation, tell Francisco you saw the ad on my show, and you'll get a 1-hour consultation. Call 914-589-1013 or go to the website transfrancisco.com. Can't go wrong. Don't wait. Ladies and gentlemen, another show is in the books. I want to thank you all. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive. God bless you all. God bless America. And long live the king of rock and roll. Peace out. Thank you, Anthony.